Welcome to the Season 3 Ward's Way podcast, where we're covering the hot legislative topics of 2025. From tariffs to tunnels and bridges. From forward trade zones to workers' compensation. To the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show. To the Marine Research Hub. Industry experts and clarification on the B1, B2 visas. Join us as we celebrate 75 years in business, and we're just getting started. Welcome to Season 3. I'm here today with Andrew Doole, president of the U.S. Boat Shows for Informa, and we're here to talk everything about Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, coming up on the 66th anniversary. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. No,
Absolutely.
happy to be here.
Well, I will say, so when did you start with doing the boat shows? We were just chatting.
I started in May 82.
May 19. Well, I think boat shows have changed a lot.
Of course, 82 was the year we were in Port Everglades, so it was...
that was your first year
my
you started?
My first year, so it was a baptism of fire going to that show.
Okay, and why was the show, for everybody, why was the show in Port Everglades that year?
The show was in Port Everglades because the show management, the management company, and the association really couldn't get a contract they liked with Bahia.
Okay.
So I think it was owned by the Omni Group at the time, and so they made the decision jointly to go to the port and try that location.
And how was it? My understanding.
It was a little bumpy.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm sure the current rips through there, and docks aren't what they were.
We had terrible weather the whole time up until Monday when we closed the show Sunday night because we weren't going to open on Monday, and it blew and blew and blew. The wave attenuator that was built to try and deal with that really didn't work that well. So it was a rough show to start with, as your first event.
Did everybody come to the table after that? Because it seems like we have found a home in Bahia.
Well, after that, we had the lawsuit with the association.
Okay.
So that the association sued Kay, and Kay finally won the lawsuit, and then that got settled that we're back running the event, and then moved the event back to Bahia.
And it's funny because show management, which was Kay Pearson, and
Correct.
Informa and MIASF, you couldn't even imagine a time that there wasn't this close, because there's great communication. You've done a lot, I will tell you, then in your tenure to repair a lot of those relationships, because the relationship couldn't be closer now. And it's funny that things can you have to go look back at history to realize
Right.
sometimes where you get.
No, I think that happens in lots of organizations, where it's the association and the producer don't see eye to eye.
Well, they have different agendas, of course. I can remember going to the show back when there were, it would be scandalous now, with the fashion shows. And remember the bikini fashion shows and the fishing equipment? It was just a different time. But
Right.
I have to say I was probably a kid around some of that time, but I don't remember being offended by it. But I look at boat shows now and the sophistication and the size of boats and the equipment, and now it's not just let's have boats and equipment. Let's have cars. Let's have helicopters. Let's have live helicopters take off from boats. I mean, boat shows have changed over the years. What are some of the things that
dramatically? You think like back in the day, the boats just backed into slips at Bahia. They
Yep.
put out a white planter box, put some mums in it, sat on the back of the boat. That was their display. Now you look at Ferretti or Azimuth or San Lorenzo.
The barges and
all the Viking everybody's doing with the displays. It forces us to do a better job, bring out up to a better level, and I think we love the show improving, love the way the manufacturers really want to up the game.
I agree.
Time.
I've noticed that. Yeah, you see a lot of investment in that.
No, there's a huge amount of investment from them, time, the displays, the flying crews in to build the displays to make it look beautiful, so they can reproduce the same feeling as if you're in their factories, or if the lifestyle that brand is going to give you when you buy that product. So that's what they're trying to portray that to. You're the attendee and you walk in. Well, if you own this boat, you can come to these events and this, and that's why they go to I think the level of sophistication with the barges is to really portray the image of the lifestyle you're about to join.
That's an interesting perspective. I always just assumed they were trying to
Look better than the stand next to them.
Maybe, but it does make sense in bringing that in. I'm sure you've had the conversations with these builders that is what they're trying to do, to bring that in, and that is so difficult to do. The other thing I don't think people pay attention to is this boat show is completely manufactured. It's not like you have the luxury of, yes, the convention center is one of seven locations of the Fort Lauderdale
Right.
Boat Show. So the boat show has 7 locations. Even the convention center is being redeveloped, but the convention center is a building that you go in and then you make your stand. It's a controlled weather environment. You guys have to build the show, create it, all of these every experience, and bring in all the docks. Talk to me. How long does that take?
The whole process, the process beforehand for Fort Lauderdale is probably like close to a month. Mm-hmm. And where we start build up staging equipment at Las Olas, and you've got 7 miles of dock, so that we're going to launch and take out for the show. So that's
7 miles. That's a wonderful trivia.
So it's it's the infrastructure for the show.
Yeah.
It's all the barges, the docks, the individual components that make up the barges for these displays, and then on top of that you've got hundreds of miles of wire.
I was
Your
just going to
favorite
say,
subject,
of course, being egocentric, thinking about the electric and all of these boats,
Yeah.
they're not sitting there running on generator.
No, 99% are on shore power, and you know what it takes to go through to do that, and it's some of it's generator, some of it's predominantly FPL power, but the larger these boats are getting, the more the power requirements. Sometimes we're having to go back to some generators in some areas to provide enough power.
Now, also just even the tents, because I was an exhibitor. I've been an exhibitor, I think, in almost every tent over the years. We were in the 1 or 200 tent with some of the regular ship store supplies. Right. I then was in the 300 and 400 tent, so I could give you an exhibitor's perspective. No, I'm teasing. I have been in all, and actually both in Miami and in Palm Beach. But I do know I've even recognized over the decades the amount. I don't think people can fully appreciate the amount of time and dedication. And just because that luxury, the game is leveling up, it doesn't mean you get a bunch more time. You don't get to go to the city in Bahia Mar and say, can we have 2 months to set up? You still get that same amount of time that you've got to be in and out.
The same amount of time, to set up and break down. So it's we've got great teams with docks, with freight, with electric. So we use a lot of subcontractors. So we'll go from a staff of 100 up to probably like 500 at showtime. So we're obviously employing a lot of people.
And it's 24 hours, right? I mean, I've been there late.
It's close
almost,
to, close to. Yeah,
because I know I've been there setting up my own booth, and it's maybe 2 days before the show, and boy, you show up the next morning, and it's like, man, people were doing a lot of work around here. This looks totally different. This is awesome. So I think there's two issues that people talk about the boat show that would it possibly be a challenge. Let's say one is weather, which you and I have experienced. Wilma,
right?
Was Wilma the first actual hurricane that disrupted a show, or have there been?
It's the first one. Yeah, we've had storms before. We had a spring show up here, 66. We had a tornado go through and tore that show up. But that was the first. You could see it coming. Is it going to miss us? Well, no, it's not going to miss us. It's going to hit us. And the plans we took, and some were right and some were wrong. And how to handle that. With the weather coming in. And
I was so impressed. I have to say, Kay Pearson, who was the owner, founder, president of show management at the time, when most of the show was set up, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the tents were set up, a lot of docks.
All of the tents were up, all of the docks were in. We were actually starting to move boats in. So it was literally like a week before.
Correct. And so I remember that instantly the association got together with obviously, the management and said, what are we going to do? And I don't think Kay hesitated. I don't think anybody from MISF did either. It was, this show is going on. Like, we're going to take care of it. And the people that showed up in that boardroom, I mean, I get chills now even talking about it. I had been president, I think, for all of 4 months. And I was like, whoa, and here's all, you've got Terry Stiles and Ron Bergeron and all of these that all came around to their friend Kay and said, we're going to help you. What do we need to do? And it wasn't a burden to the city, and it wasn't a burden on businesses. And in fact, I'm still going to stand by, it was the absolute right decision that everybody decided to do it, because I think about the jobs that were saved. You know, yes, we didn't have power. And I know that the media always wants to jump on something and say like, oh, well, the rich boat show has to go on while all of us are without power. And it's like, there are over 1,200 boats in the water, and how many exhibitors, land exhibitors, in the show, approximate?
I mean, you've got 1,200 exhibitors in all the show.
In all of the show, but that's 1,200 businesses.
Correct.
That had planned on this, and without the show, there are some businesses that I know I did interviews that more than 50% of their gross sales for the year occurred during that show, and that would have been horrible if we had canceled that and not given them an opportunity. And it turned out to be a pretty good show.
Yeah, I mean, Kay's only frustration was that we couldn't do it on time.
Right,
which,
exactly. And I
he
think
always expected, the show's got to open on time, but I think we delayed by a week and then opened.
Correct.
From memory, and it was a huge amount of work. And of course, you were going home to a house that didn't have power or water.
All of us.
So
yeah.
all of a sudden, we were actually getting fuel from the fuel dock up here, even to be able to get to work and back. We had, for those of us working at the show site, we had, like special pass to be out past curfew.
Right.
With the city of Fort Lauderdale. So it was challenging time.
But I think it was a very smart decision, and I know you were a big part of it, and because it just goes to prove that rain or sun, hurricane or not, we're having the show.
Right.
Fort Lauderdale Boat Show is here to stay, and it's happening. The second one I think that people think of is redevelopment. And I know that that's come up a lot about the Fort Lauderdale show. My philosophy is, I don't know how you have a 66-year running show spanning over 7 locations and don't think that any of those in 66 years are going to need to be redeveloped. So talk to me about all those sites. I know that the Pier 66 is...
Well, I mean, Pier 66 is done now. You've got this, fabulous...
6 restaurants, beautiful.
Fabulous, probably the, finest marina resort, in the country.
Absolutely.
The convention center, we went from nothing to build a convention center. Now you're going to have an 800-room hotel.
Beautiful.
Omni sitting right there next to the convention center, which will, add to the hotel block that we've already got. The pier, I think, is around 320 rooms, something like that.
Wow.
Some obviously 5-star rooms at the pier. So that's it.
And again, restaurants.
Spectacular. The restaurant, spectacular addition. I mean, it will be a real anchor on that end of the show, and I think it will change the dynamic at that end of the show. I mean, you've got, Lursen, Azimut Benetti, San Lorenzo, taking offices in the pier there. So it's
that's
really
huge.
A marine. A marine hub.
And they're committing to 12 months out of the year, not
right.
just during the show.
Right. And a lot of those brands have, that shows their commitment to this.
Absolutely.
This industry, this country by having big offices and support people,
sure.
service people here. So if you have another Wilma, they're not so affected because they've already got all the people here. Or when COVID happened,
COVID, that's right.
A lot of those brands had people here so they could operate kind of as normal.
I'm sorry. I completely forgot about COVID. COVID is another one. COVID was, the show was open.
COVID, we were probably one of the only events that ran. That year we were one of the only Informa events that ran out of 600 events. So,
I was there. It was phenomenal.
So with, obviously then our association, Phil and the association working hard with us, and, Rob and I working with Phil, and then, Rob Correa and the county to make it happen, and the support of, Ken McAvoy and everybody else at Informa to make that thing happen.
But I feel like that is our industry, that we always are fraught with challenges. Look at boating in general. You're always against the weather, inclement weather, So, we're always doing that. So how can we not have a show with that? But that's right, COVID. And I know I exhibited and honestly had a great show. And can I be truthful? I will tell you, I think it was a wonderful reset because one of the rules was we couldn't have hand brochures or a bunch of giveaways. Well, tell me, as an exhibitor, that is music to my ears. You mean I am not allowed, or I don't have to have tables full of things for to give away? And guess what? I still had a tremendous show.
No, I think we obviously we had a lot less people. I think we had probably half or less than the normal attendance. But I think the people that came out were really, truly inspired to be there and wanted to see product, wanted to buy something. And I think you'd find that most of the manufacturers that were there had a great show, and the dealers there had a great show. I think more for new boats and brokerage in that show.
Okay.
But I think they probably did as well as, close to a 2000, what they'd done in years past, because the buyers and the dealers or the manufacturers got together quicker because there's less people in the middle.
There you go. I'm telling you, it kind of there were many things that sometimes we have to learn from these experiences, but there were many things that even post-COVID, we're not necessarily implementing. I know for me, not having as many just little things out and not having all of that, in the end, we could just focus on really, having the conversations, talking to customers. But you don't have to go to 15 big parties and 3 big dinners and have thousands of dollars worth of giveaways to have a successful show. And it was very successful. So going back to the redevelopment. So we're moving down the waterway. We're going to skip over BMR and close with that one. But Swimming Hall of Fame was redeveloped. Beautiful.
Well, it's still in the process. So they've got the pools done. I mean, now I think after this year's show they will start on the building at the end. So then, eventually you'll have offices and an entertainment space that would be available to the show. But I'm sure that piece at the end will take 3 years, but we'll work around it for 3 years.
Absolutely, but the impact, it's not
Once
impacting.
it's done, it'll be beautiful. Yeah.
Moving down, you get to Las Olas. Las Olas was redeveloped.
Right. No, now you've got a beautiful state-of-the-art marina.
Exactly.
And, the restaurant's coming online. I think just recently the restaurant opened there. So now you've gone from, a parking lot and a old fixed marina to, a beautiful floating dock marina with offices, restaurant. It's a complete upgrade.
As an exhibitor for a long time, Las Olas used to be, you're kind of down at the end. And now there are exhibitors that are thrilled that they've been down there, that now they have that entrance, they have that restaurant, and it's re-engaged.
You've got the restaurant, you've got the parking garage, you've got the connectivity with Las Olas.
They have like a VIP area. You can get somebody into a restaurant, in and out of the parking garage, and into your... When I was down there during the last boat show, people were thrilled. Nobody wants to move from there, just so you know. So from me to you, there you go. Maybe some people do. I didn't talk to everybody, but to me, the sense was that people were thrilled, and because of the redevelopment, they don't feel like they're exactly where they want to be. And so I guess now coming back to BMR, let's talk about that. What is that development going to look like, and how long?
It's obviously been a long process that started with the Heisinger Group wanting to do something there, and then they sold everything out to Blackstone. Blackstone pursued it with the city for some time. We worked through a lot of these different plans with different the different developers, and and now the current group Tate and related to doing what they're going to do. But we've worked closely with Jimmy and Kenny Tate on the project, and with EDSA. A local company that's worked a lot with those guys, and then worked closely with us on other projects as well. So we've had a lot. The boat show has had a lot of say and input into what it's going to eventually be like there. And the show will, nothing is going to touch the in-water portion, so that remains exactly the same. So the land will change a little bit, but for the better. You'll have, nice hotel, and you have a beautiful area there that's
absolutely
landscaped and first class looking, instead of something built in
change
the 1960s.
Is a great thing.
Yeah.
I agree, and I guess where I was coming from is that in the meetings that I was in back with previous owners, I will say that there's always been a collective emphasis and focus on how do we keep every exhibitor happy
Right.
that's been an exhibitor, because these are businesses, and like you said, there's 1,200. People may have to change, people may have to adjust, but can we still give them the same show, if not better? And the answer has always been yes.
I believe
People
so,
will just
yeah.
have to, again, just reimagine what, people will look at it after. My guess is that people say, oh, well, how did we live like this? How did we ever do a show without this?
Well, I mean, you'll have a St. Regis hotel on site.
Just
Now
saying.
you've got, five-star hotel at the pier. They have a St. Regis there, which will probably be 5-star.
Restaurants.
Yeah, restaurants. So you'll have a lot more options for all the people, especially those that are traveling in. I think it's going to be a great improvement to the show.
And do you have a timeline on that? 10 years? Is it something like that? But I mean, in the end, there's not a plan.
It's a phased development, but I mean, the
Right.
show will
There's
go
not a
on.
year planned that the
There's-
show will not go on. The show is going to go on through the
100% every year.
good, and that's
Yeah.
you heard it here. That's
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. And not that I have any doubts, but people, especially the people that just come into town, or people that don't know, and they go, oh, that's getting redeveloped. Are they going to
Well,
close
our
it?
industry is rife for rumors,
Oh,
right?
we love those. You want to start one here? What can we start? Let's start. Well, I'll tell you what. It's not really a rumor, but it is a funny. We were talking about your previous predecessor, Kay Pearson, and I do have to say, I think about him often when I see some of these boats that are trying to take their lines off, maybe right after or during the
Right.
horns, and he's mad. Is that your fault, or whose fault?
Probably so. I
He's
mean,
got to be just.
Unfortunately, you've got boats that have to get out by, the bigger the boats we've got in there now, they need a lot more water to come and go.
I was just
And,
going to say.
So things that we do for the show now are, revolve around Mother Nature with the tide.
Absolutely.
They've got to get out at some point, and you have a certain amount of time you've got to get out of that whole facility. So we're trying to get out of Bahia Mar completely by the weekend. So, yeah, you're going to have some boats move out a little early on Sunday afternoon.
Well, and they all
to
also
make
have
that happen.
they have places to go.
Yeah.
Many of them could be sold, and they're heading someplace to do a closing, or many
Yeah.
of them are getting a charter, and they're heading to do that. How is one of our guests during this season? We talked about foreign trade zone. How has that been beneficial for the show? Because I learned something about that: when to do foreign trade zone and when to have a boat show bond.
I think it's probably beneficial. It hasn't, the boat. Obviously, there's hundreds of boat show bonds out there. I mean, if the whole entire site was a free trade zone, it would probably help all the brokers out. But it's.
So you would like to see if during the
I think-
Fort
I
Lauderdale
think if
Boat Show
there's-
we could have a foreign trade zone for the show
Yeah,
for 5
especially
days.
for that week. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
week, a
you
free
know
trade
what?
zone for the week. Yeah.
Let's start that.
Let's
I
talk
think
to
that's
Ron.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk to Ron. Let's do that. Let's get him on the podcast. We need this. Where's producer Jordan when I need her? But she's not here, but we're going to tell her we need Ron DeSantis because we want to make the Fort Lauderdale. Is that possible? Could we do an event trade zone?
I don't know. It's a dream. I mean, it would be great. It would cause it would alleviate a lot of headaches that everybody's going through now.
And I feel like it would definitely be an economic impact. I do know that our governor was in Italy, I think, encouraging people to buy boats and have boat building be more
Yeah,
in the
he
U.S.
went to Italy. He came and opened the Miami show for us this year. So he was at Miami International Boat Show and opened
Wow.
that. So
That must have
I
been
think
great.
he enjoys
gets it.
Yeah, he gets it, and he's doing the tax break on gasoline, and then not banning gasoline motors on lakes in the state of Florida. So he's very, I think he's very boater friendly.
I agree, and I feel like he had a saying that bring more boating to Florida. We're an open. I think that's what
I think they're encouraging boating, yachting, boating, marine business to come to the state of Florida.
Well, I can tell you,
Yeah.
it's the place to be.
Yeah.
It really is. Speaking of Miami, I hear Miami show's changing next year.
It is.
That has been
and,
changing over the years.
Yeah, and we're actually going back to our roots a little bit. So
I like it.
We're going back to the creek. So from Herald Plaza, it was a 2-year process working with City of Miami Beach to make that happen.
Good.
And you worked through 2 administrations there, so it was a long, expensive process.
That's the thing I don't think people understand, how much behind the scenes work you have to do in order to change a venue or bring that back. And so there will be a lot more connectivity between
Yeah, I think
Indian
it's
Creek
so-
and the
so
convention
now,
center.
Now you've got a drive time of perhaps 40 minutes or more to go from Herald Plaza to the convention center.
Yes.
Hopefully that's more like 15, 20 minutes.
Or you definitely, what I got the sense of and I've been an exhibitor at Herald Plaza, is that it's going to take you time, and there was a hesitation. Do I leave and
Yeah.
go? Will
Do
I
I-
get
do I need
back?
to go?
Do I need to go?
Yeah.
Ugh. But if it's that close, then I just think there's so much more connectivity between
the
the
change
two.
was really brought by our exhibitors wanted to go back there, and they just weren't happy with the current site, and so we listened to them, and
And how's it going to work? Is there going to be a gate of sorts? Because I feel like that was the issue when it was along.
Well, it's the show itself will be half a mile long instead of like a mile and a quarter. So we
Okay.
had to make a lot of concessions with the City of Miami Beach to move back.
Okay.
One of which was reduce the size and the impact of the show
Okay.
on Collins Avenue and Indian Creek and to the population there. And so move in, move out, moving equipment in for the
Okay.
show is going to be a lot more complicated than it was when we were last there. But that's logistics we're working through now.
But I do feel like people miss having the show in South Beach along
Sure,
Collins
I think,
Avenue.
the allure and the glamour of the beautiful Fountain Blue and the Eden
Eden
Rock,
Rock
right next
and-
there. The history with those two hotels, and then all of South Beach, and if you're the exhibitors there, their customer likes to stay there on South
Agree.
Beach, so they would pretty much staying there than getting an Uber to come over to Herald Plaza. So we're just moving the show back to where the end user really wants to be.
Well, and that show you partner with EBA, correct? And so I
Right.
think EBA's really been
EBA
promoting
and
it.
MMA, so
Okay.
so
That's right, the
so
MMA portion.
you've got the obviously the convention center,
Yep.
and it's thriving. The portion that will be on Indian Creek, and
Which,
then,
by the way, that convention center was
Yeah.
just redeveloped not that long ago.
no, right,
Yep.
you went through a complete redevelopment. Then we're in the IGY Marina.
Oh, yep.
So we're there, and then we're in the FEC slip with the sailing yachts.
Okay.
So it's in
All right.
it's in
So
multiple locations.
so that's Miami. So Miami now has 4 locations.
yeah.
That's great. Now let's talk about Palm Beach. Palm Beach is single spot,
One location.
one location. Take over the whole waterfront and
maxed out,
all
yeah.
of Palm Harbor this year, correct?
We,
all
we,
of it.
We rented for the first time all of Palm Harbor.
That's huge.
Largest
That's
show
a big
we've
deal.
done. I think we're maxed out now with what we did. So it was a lot of boats in water, some bigger boats than we'd ever done in water. So we're happy with that. I think a lot more European interest in the show from shipyards brokers. Perfect time of year, obviously.
Yeah.
Right before Easter, still catches everybody that's hasn't gone back north. Very user-friendly show. You can walk in and out. It's West Palm Beach prides itself on being a walking city.
Yeah.
And so I think you can
True.
walk out the show, walk up Clematis, find a restaurant. Several businesses there, that aren't necessarily connected to the show, but the French restaurant right next to the show on Saturday had their record of records. So it
Wow.
was,
And that's going to happen in Fort Lauderdale too.
Yeah.
Once these
I think they'll
properties
see-
are developed, I mean, we're going to have that same walkability. We just
Yes.
right now are lacking that, and in order to get that, we just need to redevelop
No, I
it.
think
So-
you've got lots of restaurants. Great to have the new restaurant on Los Solos. Coconuts is always super
Always,
busy every
yes.
year, and I'm sure
I went there last
Elliot's
year.
a good friend, and I know that he and his staff have a great week during boat show week.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just the crowd that we bring, but I think you got a completely different demographic to the crowd that comes to Tortuga, and I think ours is
spend
spending
more
a
money.
lot more.
Yes, we
spending
spend
a
more
lot
money.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, because the people aren't driving in for a day. Most people are
Yeah.
coming, and you're still doing the boat show survey, correct?
Yeah.
Good.
No, so attendee scores, by an industry standard on all the shows are pretty high, so are very high, from the attendee and the exhibitors.
Any new shows coming up?
Well, we last year we did Newport for the first time, so we bought Newport last February.
The September show, the
yeah.
Newport International, okay?
Yeah, so Newport, Rhode Island, and we're very, very happy to have that in the family. It's a great location. I think it's got a lot of promise, and we hope it's the star of the Northeast.
And I feel like that's it's great because it's the end of season for them.
Right.
Most of the boats travel down that have been up north, and then we go right into Fort Lauderdale on the start of really the fall season here. And then they go to the Caribbean.
No, you see a lot of the boats leaving. I mean, they're going to, the waterfront when you go back there in the middle of the winter is completely different.
Oh, yeah.
The marinas are empty. The mooring fields are empty. There's nothing out there. It's bleak. And then come, like April, they start putting the boats back in the marinas and on the mooring fields. So it's very, we're just not used to seasonal boating. We're so lucky to have 12-month boating
we really
down
are.
here.
We are.
We don't appreciate what other people go through with the short seasons. We are going to start another show 26 in Chicago.
Oh,
so we'll
wow.
be working with Suntex and using their marina there. So we'll be doing a boat show, the Windy City Boat Show.
Well, you heard it first here. That's interesting. And when will that be?
Next summer.
Oh, in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Next June.
What about Monaco? I know for a while there was talk about the dates being close and, ships leaving, boats that are leaving on Dock Express. The ships were leaving and there wasn't. I feel like that's kind of gone away. Is that's an issue that there's enough space in between?
I think there's enough between. We have boats that travel from the show over.
I agree.
I mean, some of the dock, if they're going Dock Express, but there's a lot of them that are coming on their own bottom, coming over from that show. So,
which also just goes to attest to the boats changing, getting bigger, and so on and so forth.
And some of the exhibitors have got, an exhibit in both places. So it's tight, but it's not impossible.
Okay. Well, I also know, and I do want to touch base just so people understand the economic impacts of the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show. So we have 1,200 businesses that exhibit. We have 1,200 exhibitors. We have about 100,000 people that attend the show.
Correct.
Every year.
Every year.
And the net cost to the city of Fort Lauderdale is
not very
zero.
Much. Yeah.
Okay. And because the show covers the police, the garbage,
we pay our way. Yeah.
That's right. So, but again, and not to jump on a bandwagon, but I know I've always heard people say, I just don't think they understand that we get the Super Bowl every year. We have an event that's put on every year in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Nobody has to vie for it. People are. I'm sure there are other people that would love to have the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show in their city or their area, and the show takes care of all of it, and the city benefits from that greater than the economic impact of the Super Bowl every year.
Yeah, I think the show is 1.8 or it's around 1.8 billion every year. So I mean that's obviously a huge economic benefit, and it touches so many businesses.
It really does. I know even for us, it's a month-long show. It's a couple weeks before the show, whether it's preparing the boats, people that come into town, and then it's all the transactions after. Boats that were sold, boats that need surveys, boats that are heading to the Caribbean fairly quickly and they need some work. And so I know for us, it's a good month long. So.
No, I don't think people think about all the other businesses outside the marine industry. Obviously the hotels, the restaurants are jammed. All of the florists are jammed all over the city. There's so many
groceries,
delivery services.
The delivery services, laundry, catering.
So there's dozens of businesses that benefit from the show.
And thanks to you, the show stays where it is. You've been a part of it since 1982, all of the challenges. We thank you for being our leader and helping us keep the show here and all that you do for Informa. Thank you for being here on the Ward's Way podcast.
Thank you for joining us this season on season 3 of the Ward's Way podcast. Be sure you subscribe because there's much more to come.